a Republican can win in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And he said, we need you there. Great to be here, Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Thank
Or,
you.
when the governor's not present, I can call you governor.
That's right. That is the protocol, right?
Yes, it is.
And it's interesting. You know people who have been around a while because I've talked to another senator, Greg Taylor.
Yes.
Anytime I'm around, he's always calls me governor, right?
Yeah.
When he knows the protocol, right?
That
He's
is
been
the
around
protocol.
for
Not many people know that.
That's right. Yeah, that's great. So, former state senator yourself, we wanted to bring you on the show because we'd love to get your perspective on, just what it was like. You were in politics for a long time, and then now you've been out for a few years. Just kind of your thoughts on kind of where Indiana is and what you see the future of Indiana politics, and then just kind of talk shop with you. Before we were recording, we were talking about the building, right?
Oh, yeah.
And just how amazing the building
a
is.
working museum.
Yes, it is.
It was a pleasure to stuff envelopes for Bill Hudnut for Congress in 1974.
Wow.
And so after that, I found my way through the system with being his intern in 1979, and after that, working for my aunt ran for superintendent of public instruction, and
Was that a convention race still back then?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it was. I think it was convention.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
because
convention.
it was up until just recently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was convention.
Okay.
And but it was a great run working in politics and going to college and really learning what was all about in learning so much about politics and government. And it got to be so interesting. I was Lieutenant Governor Orr's intern in his run for governor in 1980, and I had to talk to the intern in this office, so I called this office. It was about 7 o'clock at night, and I thought she'd answer the phone. Well, Lieutenant Governor Bob Orr answers the phone. So it's been a fascinating time the last 50 years, and once you get it in your blood, it never leaves.
Yeah.
And so I entered the Senate in 1990 in November, and from 1991 all the way to 2020, it was a great run working on hard issues. Chairing the party at one point late in 2017 to 19, and just participating in everything I could as hard issues and being the caucus chairman, and I loved it.
That's awesome. So you were caucus chair?
Yes, 16 years.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's amazing.
Chaired the utility committee for 16 years.
Okay. All right.
And
who was the pro tem?
well, Bob Garton. Was the longest serving pro tem ever.
Okay.
And then 2006 came along, and then he was not.
Okay.
Greg Walker replaced him, and I learned a great deal from Bob Garton.
As in Greg Walker, current Senator Greg Walker.
Correct.
So he was the pro tem at one point.
No.
Caucus chair.
Yeah, no. Greg Walker beat him in the primary.
In the primary, gotcha.
And then he was the Secretary
that's
of
right.
State.
That's
and then
right.
David Long.
Yes, David Long took
replaced
over.
him. Yeah.
Okay. No. Okay. Fascinating. And so you really had a 20-year run? Is that about
In the Senate?
In the Senate?
Yeah, I was there for 30 years.
Oh, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
From 1990 to 2020.
Okay, that's okay. Wow, that's amazing. So you saw, a lot of interesting changes because the Senate from your time in was always Republican controlled, right?
Yeah, since 1970, other than 2 years with Bob Fair as the Democrat pro tem.
Okay.
That was the Watergate time.
Oh, was it really? Okay. And then, but the House was going back and forth a lot more.
All the time.
So what was it like? What was it like, kind of having the sort of the Republican leadership? You guys were in that controlled the Senate, but then you have a House that's you never know. That's got to be hard to figure out how to move legislation.
It was really difficult, and we had kind of some columns of the Senate, meaning Senator Morris Mills and Senator Larry Borst. Senator Pat Miller, all being in very, very integral positions in chairmanships and budget and finance and health. And so Indianapolis we do produce like 33% of the general fund in the way of tax money. And back then, I really learned in the 90s about leadership and how important Indianapolis is to the state of Indiana. And but as you said, it would go back and forth. We had Evan Bayh as a governor. We had Frank O'Bannon as governor. We had Joe Kernan as governor in the 90s. We also had Democrat speakers. And so you really had to work with Democrats to get a bill through. Yeah. And I think I did that well with the legislation that we passed. And so it was a different time, and protocols and a lot of decorum, and we all worked together.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah, people oftentimes say, we're the most divided we've ever been in America, which I think that's kind of looking at history with rose-colored glasses if you say that, because there were Alexander Hamilton was killed in a duel by Aaron Burr, right?
Yeah,
I mean, so like we've had great times of division in our nation, and I would say even more so than today. But the '90s Democrats. So let's take Evan Bayh, right? You look at
he's a Republican today.
I was going to say, right? I mean, like
and so is Frank.
Yeah,
and so is Joe
and JFK, right? Would it be he would be a far right Republican,
right?
I guess what do you say to the people who say, man, we should just be able to come together, but we're so vastly polar opposites on ideology. Whereas I think you could go back to the '90s and you could look at Evan Bayh and you could say, okay, he's a free market capitalist, right? He believes in traditional values to some extent, right? There was maybe they weren't as far one way or the other as maybe some other pro-American valued people were, but it was usually pro-American values. I think you can make that argument. How are you supposed to walk in unity today, in your opinion? And you're seeing, I know you got a big heart for mental health, and that's I feel like the division that we see in politics sometimes spurs on this mental, downward spiral for a lot of people. So, what's in your opinion bringing people in politics over all these core issues? What do you think we should do better?
Well, I think conversation. I think the Senate and the House have changed so much, and there was a lot of camaraderie back in the '90s and the 2000s, if you will. I think in Congress, I think a lot of people are spending a lot of time in their districts. They're at home a lot. I think that there's not a whole lot of going out to dinner, and I think social media has sharpened views. I think politics and government is much more transparent today because you can get an opinion out there in seconds. Yeah. Versus back in the '90s, we had call sheets. People would call in. People would write us letters. To a certain extent, people would come to the State House. But now, you throw 20,000 emails at a state senator on an issue. It's much different than 500 telephone calls. Yeah. And so I think I think transparency is great. I also think that they in the legislature and the governor and you are more at a beck and call. I mean, it's instantaneous, and so things can turn really, really quick, and which is good. But if you had camaraderie, I think people are, as far as I can see from the legislature, I think people are more in their own camps, in their own philosophical corners of the world. And what I would hope would improve is that both sides would have a little more collegial aspect to it. When they had a special session with the life session that summer. I don't watch the legislature online, but I decided that I just want to take a peek. Yeah. And
that was right after you got out, right? That was
yes, it was. Yeah. And I heard a lot of people at the microphone being really sincerely but terse. And I heard a lot of sounding from back and forth from the two sides in the Senate, almost yelling at each other. And frankly, Governor, that is not my Senate. that decorum and the protocols were a little absent at that time. And I haven't really heard much. We brought the expansion of the Lifeline Law bill, and we had kids that from college and high school who came and testified this last session.
I remember when you were
right.
there. Yeah.
And I thought everybody was very kind to the young adults that came to the State House. So and we passed the bill, and we got our point forward that we were saving lives with it. And so my feelings were a little bit restored that the legislature was listening and not so combative.
Yeah. I think it's the issues too, right? I mean, we got a little heated in the legislature this past session, and I don't always think that's a bad thing. I think it's good to pound the table, and iron sharpens iron, and so I think it's maybe one encouragement that I would say is we just need to learn to be unoffendable. I think
I don't know about that. I think listening.
Yeah.
I think listening. I see a lot of that people are not listening to each other, and I think that. I think you have to have a crust about you around here. You've got to have a bark and exterior. So the unoffendable is probably wise, along with having openness that you're willing to listen to the other side.
Yeah, well, scriptures say be slow to speak and quick to listen, right? So that's a
well said.
That's a good wise proverb to remember. So you do a lot of work with mental health.
I do.
The Lifeline bill. I'm glad you brought that up. That was cool. We had some of the guys from Purdue in my office. We took a picture with them before they were over in the
Smart
Senate.
kids.
Yeah, they were great. Tell us about that, and then dealing with your work on mental health. It's something I'm passionate about as well. I know the previous Lieutenant Governor Crouch was also very passionate about that. I think we are seeing a very quick decline of mental health in our society. So what can we do? What are you doing to bring us back?
Well, my history with this is, to me, is interesting. I went to Rebuff Prep, and it was an all-boys school. And one of the great things about Rebuff is they took kids on field trips. One of the first field trips was LaRue Carter. And back in the 70s, 1973, when I started going to school there, the song "The White Coats Are Coming to Get Me," aha, aha, and we had Muscatatuck, we had Logansport, we had a lot of hospitals. We're almost akin to
institutionalized.
Department of Correction, and I started learning about mental health back then. And the mental health issue, addiction and recovery, all were a part of what I felt as though the counterintuitive issues that I worked on. We passed the Kids First license plate, which prevented monies went towards different entities in the community, private entity, public-private 501c3s that prevented child abuse. And that was really the first time government was not cleaning up after the parade, but leading the parade and preventing. And then we get to the idea of 211 I brought to Indiana. The idea of the safe haven law I wrote, where you can drop your baby off. And what people would think, well, you're getting around the adoption system, that you can drop your baby off at a fire station or a hospital, but all to save lives. And then we came on the Lifeline law, which is now gives immunity to everybody in a social situation that may feel like, oh, we don't want to call the police because we're going to get in trouble. And so, and then it gets to the mental health part. And a lot of times, in the very beginning, most of us wanted to throw addicts in jail because they were breaking the law and taking drugs. And now we try to put not a spin, but a heartfelt shoulder or embrace around people that are suffering from mental health issues, including substance abuse. And so if one looks at my career, what I tried to do is turn issues around and think about the idea of, well, let's help people. Let's people are soft and they make mistakes, and one mistake shouldn't harm you for the rest of your life. And so that's how I got to the mental health issue. And I still work. I want to start a network of college students around the state that talk about alcohol, that talk about mental health, that talk about hunger, and these issues that are kind of hidden in life. And I like digging those out, and that's why I love being on your podcast and my podcast, because I can talk truth to power on those issues.
Yeah.
And that's really how I got here. And it may be a struggle for relevance, but also what I do these days about these issues is something I love and I feel strongly about.
Yeah. I love the heart for mercy that you have, right? I think, I'm reminded of, Scripture, Micah 6:8 says to do justice, to love mercy, and then to walk humbly with your God, right? And sometimes there's ditches on both sides of justice and mercy, right? If you're all justice and no mercy, you just become this hard-hearted, throw the book at him kind of person. If you are all mercy and no justice, well, then you get anarchy and lawlessness, right? And
one can say the Department of Correction is one large mental health hospital.
Yes, right.
And people incarcerated.
So going back to the years of institutionalizing,
right?
We saw the abuse that turned into, right? It, to your point, kind of became penitentiaries in a lot of ways, and they were treated like criminals when really they were just mental health patients. So we went away. The pendulum swung the other way. We said
too far,
right? So now there's no institutions.
Yeah, we have group homes.
And group homes
that don't work.
And they don't work.
And you know what group homes were about? When Evan Bayh brought it from Washington, D.C., and we were going to close Muscatatuck and all the different places.
Yeah.
It was in lieu of putting people in group homes so they can be near their families. Well, it turns out that families don't want to be near them. And we didn't use an innovative approach back then. We just shifted, like you said, we just shifted all the way over. And Department of Correction ended up being the LaRue Carter of the day.
Yeah, right. So what's the answer then? Because there's probably a balance, right? Is it to bring back some aspect of an institution with maybe better boundaries and more loving care? I mean, is that possible, or do you think it'll just fall right back into the abuse and become another, hot mess of just people taking advantage of the system or abusing people in the system?
Well, in 2017, with the help of my friend and colleague and my legislative assistant, Jordan Rose, we wrote 24 bills regarding mental health, and 17 passed into law. And very few of those had anything to do with addiction, but they had everything to do with addiction. We really focused on recovery and how we can help Steve McCaffrey at the Mental Health Association of Indiana, and how we can help individuals recover. And what we started on our way is having recovery houses. And we're not there yet. Yeah. But you've seen in legislative sessions in the past that we're working on 988, which is a suicide hotline, and making that perfect. And and I say we because I guess it's society that should be working on it.
Yeah. And you're still an advocate for it.
Yes,
an advocate for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it takes all of us.
And we're reaching out a hand to somebody who might. Like, for instance, Scott County was an enormous situation when Governor Pence was in office. And I believed a needle exchange. Well, that's counterintuitive itself. And convincing our members of the Senate, to support a needle exchange where you could exchange needles with an addict and give them information. And just maybe, number one, they'll have clean needles. But two, they'll have information in Scott County, among many other places, where they can get help. And it for a lot of practical purposes, it worked. And so the legislature continues to struggle with it.
The downside to that is, I think maybe at the beginning it did. Now with the needle exchange program, there's a few counties that still do that, especially after 2020 and everything kind of ramped up. And so now we're hearing from some counties where it's like, well, Bloomington's a great example, where they're pushing the needle exchange program, and now it's an abuse, right? Now the addicts they just know, and there's not really a motive to help. It's more just to, keep people from, getting too, out of control. But really what you're doing, you're spurring them into this out of control mode. And we're finding like there's ministries, the warehouse down in Bloomington, they have to pick up needles from out of their parking lot. And this is where kids are going to come. It's a skate park. It's all, and
it's come around.
And so it's kind of, how do you?
We're enabling them. Is
Yes,
what you're
exactly.
saying.
Right. Yes. So
those programs have to be refined.
Yeah.
And as well as the fact that it probably is still state law that if you travel in a car and you have a needle on you, it's against the law. And I wrote a piece of legislation that said if you get stopped and you have a needle on you, if you tell law enforcement that you have it and there's no scuffle because you fear for that law enforcement officer, if there's a scuffle, that you have a needle, that was a bill that failed. And I had a lot of legislation that failed. But if it gets towards enabling, the programs have to be refined.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody doesn't get the amount of needles that they're requesting. But you're right. It just like anything else, programs have a shelf life, and hopefully that the individuals that actually promote those refine it so that people aren't taking advantage of it. People will take advantage. No question about it.
And then it's how do you prosecute or come down on the people who are taking advantage of it. I mean, I think it's what's happening right now with immigration. Right? It's a great example of that. We want to be a welcoming nation. We have ways to come here. But the heart of welcoming turned into just open borders.
Right.
People took advantage of it. And now the consequences are we've got to go clean that mess up, and people are getting hurt because of that, right?
Our friend Mike Delph was state senator.
Yeah.
And in the Hispanic community, his nickname was El Diablo.
Okay.
And he just wanted immigration. He didn't want illegal immigration. He was kind of before his time.
Okay.
And it kind of gets by you. When I was in the Senate, I went into a bank and the teller was Hispanic, and she said, "You're going the right direction with your legislation because I worked for 10 years to become American."
Yeah.
And she said, "I want everybody in back of me, and I want people to get in line and make the process not simpler but more streamlined." She didn't say it like this, but what she was saying, intimating, is. Make it fair, like I went through the process. And most people don't really realize that.
Well, until they're at Disney World and they've been waiting in line for 3 hours, and then a family cuts right in front of them, everybody realizes that.
Yes.
And everyone will be like, that's not right.
Right.
Get to the back of the line, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You could be liberal, conservative, progressive.
Everybody understands that.
But yeah, that's a universal truth. Don't cut in front of somebody in line when they've been waiting for 3 hours to ride,
That's the essence.
It's a small world.
That's the essence of illegal immigration.
Yeah, that's right. But going back to the point is when people abuse the well-meaning programs, it hurts everybody.
Absolutely.
And then you have to go back. I like the idea of sunsetting some of these things. If it has a shelf life, you create a policy or a legislation that maybe might address something. Well, give it 5 years, right? Make it end in 5 years, so that way you got to come back. Because what happens is people get voted out of office, leave office, retire. The program still exists. Who's really giving the TLC to the program, right? Well, you aren't anymore from within the building, right? And so that's
Micah, you raise a very good point. In the 80s, and we did away with it before I got there, but we actually had a Marion County committee in the Senate because Marion County had Unigov and so many things that were happening in Indianapolis. And Dick Lugar was a very strong mayor back then. But as well as the fact that we had a sunset committee where all laws went in for, if it was 5 years, the law, a part of the code would go in front of this committee and they would look at the viability. And I always wanted to bring that back.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
It'd be you have the code review that Senator Mike Young always worked on. But I think if you had a sunset committee, it'd be almost like a Doge for the legislature. And I always wanted to bring that back. But we've had strong governors through the years, and they felt like they could put things into order that they wanted that were important. But a sunset committee in the legislature would be a very good idea to my members in the Senate.
Well, hey, listen, I'll push that all day long. I think just adding law on top of law creates just a behemoth of just chaos, right? Like, it's like, how do you know? I mean, when your legal code, couldn't fit into this room right now, right?
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
how many laws.
Well, we have it on disk or on in the cloud right now, but every 2 years they would send me 14 books with the code, and as a senator, I would every member of the legislature would get a new set of the code, and it would be 14 books. Yeah, and finally they streamlined it.
Because they were spending $5 million printing all those books every 2 years.
Right. And then the legislature got in the business of printing the books.
Oh, my
then we went
gosh.
to new technology.
Oh,
but
my gosh.
bottom line is and through the years, we always say if you put one on the books, you'd take two off.
That'd be great.
And so I think the code would be very, very streamlined. If you look at that issue in Bloomington with a needle exchange and refine it.
Yeah. No, that's it's good thoughts there. Okay, so when you have been 30 years in the state senate, you got out of the state senate, but why did you leave the sate senate? What kind of compelled you to do that?
Well, I stepped away for a lot of reasons, but one. I got married and had plans to move to Carmel, but as well as the fact that I believed that I could make more of an impact outside of the building than inside the building, and so there are a lot of reasons why, but 30 years is a long time.
Yeah, sure.
And COVID had struck. I remember going to the microphone on March 3rd and taking my laptop when Senator Lannon from the Democrat side says, "What are we doing about this problem that is coming on, this pandemic?" And I took my laptop and I said, "The governor's already put a committee together. He's starting to work on it." And we died on March 11th, and then it was Katie by the door. And so we went through a summer of that. I just felt like it was time to give somebody else another try.
So you were still, even though you didn't run for re-election, you were still in office until all 2020?
All 2020. My seat was up in 2022. I stepped away, and Kyle Walker replaced me as the state senator. And it was time. And I always believed that we needed more women in our caucus, more women in the system, and I also believe we needed new blood. And Kyle's been an outstanding state senator for District 31, and that's primarily why I left, is because I could have lived in my district and fulfilled the rest of my term until 2022. But I felt like when you have these feelings that others need a chance, and 30 years is a long time. It was just time.
Yeah. Tell us about your, you ran for mayor, right?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
When did you, was that 19?
2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I believe government is something that's very important to me. Back in before 2000, we established this Constitution display case downstairs after we had the constitutions conserved. And I really believe in government, and I believe in saving government and establishing government. And when I saw Indianapolis really spinning, and I believe that we needed a Republican voice at City Hall. And when I won re-election in 2018, and I was chairman of the party, I went around and I asked.
You were chairman of
Marion County Republican
Marion
Party,
County,
for a couple of years.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And I saw the party really need strong leadership in Indianapolis, as well as the fact that I believe Mayor Hogsett was. I thought the city was on autopilot. I think it's still on autopilot. I thought the convention business was strong, but the pandemic hadn't gotten here yet. And I just believe that the infrastructure of Indianapolis was all wrong. I believe crime was rising, and it was time to step forward. And it was a 10-month campaign. I announced in January for the November election, and we had to raise money in a hurry. We raised $1 million over 10 months. The mayor had 5, but I thought that the Republican Party needed a strong voice on the ballot.
Yeah.
And that's why I ran. I'm proud of the run, and to this day, I talk about it as a point of pride, regardless of the result. And Indianapolis, Bill Hutton had always called it, he was worried about being a donut city. And right now it's a donut city with chocolate on it. It was a chocolate donut.
Yeah.
The suburbs have thrived. But the city of Indianapolis is still a great city, but there's so many things that are astray.
Yeah.
And we need good, sound, conservative principles in that city so it can continue to grow. And we want it to be a safe city.
Yeah, it's very commendable. Jumping into a race, mayor's race in Indianapolis is no easy task, and even though it didn't go the way that I'm sure you wanted it to go, it's still it still takes a lot and a lot of effort, and you know to jump in and do that.
I was having lunch with Speaker Houston and talking to him about it, and he said, why not?
Yeah.
He said we need a good Republican in office. And I chaired Greg Ballard's mayoral campaign in the first campaign and the second, and he said, you did that. You saw that in live color that a Republican can win in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And he said, we need you there.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that convinced me that I needed to run.
You've seen Republican politics for a long time in the state of Indiana, right? So you've lived it, breathed it, slept it, and so I want to throw maybe this out, maybe as the last kind of idea. So my election, my nomination really was a convention race.
Absolutely.
Right? I think the delegates and the conventions are some of the coolest, neatest experiences in the Republican Party. It's really the life's blood of the party, right?
Absolutely.
The delegates and the precinct committee men. Like I love that how it's structured. As I've looked at statewide offices, you got the 17th Amendment that sort of destroyed the U.S. Senate process. The Senate, in my opinion, we should repeal the 17th Amendment, and U.S. senators from each state should be elected by the legislature. I would much rather have that because then now you've got the state representation out in Congress the way it was designed. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case anymore, so you got to run a statewide race. Mm-hmm. It takes millions of dollars to do that.
20.
Oh, yeah, crazy, right? A governor, right? Millions of dollars to run a gubernatorial race. Even potentially your congressional nominations and races, it takes millions of dollars to do that. Yeah, as I went through my process, someone like me didn't have, wasn't independently wealthy, just hard work, right? Yeah, like you too, right? So, but hard worker, right? You and I we got that quality. Good message, right? We've done that as well, where we can get out and message well and cast vision well.
You depend on yourself,
right? Exactly, and the conventions give everyone, I think, a more of an equal playing field because you don't need $1 million to go out and sell the vision to 2,000 people, right?
You're a witness,
right? Yeah. So I started thinking, what do you think? What would it be like if we turned our nomination process for all statewide?
I think we should.
Into the convention nomination.
Yeah, our friend Rob Kendall and I have talked about this, and I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in politics say, I changed my mind. I think we should have a convention-oriented nomination process.
Yeah.
I think that, and our friend Abdul talks about that everybody has to pay for the party primary fights. Whereas if in a convention, it can be a Republican-funded nomination. There are a lot of good...
Taxpayers don't have to pay for it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so, yes, I think going to being a Marion County Republican at heart, we had slating forever.
Yeah.
And so I believe in the party making this election. And a primary voter, Republican, Democrat, is so much different than a convention voter. And it's just incredibly different.
Convention voters, what I noticed, especially in my race, convention voters are super educated.
Right.
They take the time to study. We got all of the endorsements for my opponent were coming from your typical establishment Republicans. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Even President,
that's true.
Even President
She was my
Trump,
intern in
right?
1990.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Right. And she's a wonderful state rep,
great.
right? Yep. But even President Trump, was pushed to endorse her, and he did. I don't think he knew her. I think it was just more of a call-in, right?
Yeah, it was a team.
But you were able to overcome even that, or I was able to overcome that. And the reason is because the convention delegates, they don't tell me who to vote for. I don't care if you're Ronald Reagan incarnate, right? Like, I'm going to do my own research. And it doesn't mean they disrespect Trump or they don't, like, they love Trump, right? They like, but when even President Trump came in and said, hey, you should vote for this way, they were like, well, thank you, but we're going to do our own research. And I think that's so powerful that you're nominating people now within an electorate that is very involved, very engaged, and very educated. And right now, the primary process, if you just go through...
You wouldn't have won a primary.
They're not. Oh, absolutely.
Lieutenant Governor candidate, if it was
Yes.
a primary,
Couldn't
wouldn't
do
have
it.
won it.
Yep.
And, it was John Mutz who ran against 5 other people. One was the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
And he won a primary.
Wow.
And it's because he was from Indianapolis.
Okay. Right.
But, there are a lot of people that have gone through statewide office that would not have won a primary.
Yeah.
Convention delegates live and breathe Republican.
Yeah.
They are conservative. They show up,
Yeah.
and it's just truly the party apparatus that puts their representative forward.
And it sort of eliminates this money threshold, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because again, you don't need $1 million to run a strong convention race. You can do it with $100,000, right?
I think I probably would have run for governor a lot earlier.
Yes,
if
it
it
was
would
a
have been a convention.
Yeah.
Because having Indianapolis behind me, and it would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
You can. It's not like anything else with your podcast or any kind of distribution. You get the harder you work, the more you get.
Yeah,
And sitting on somebody's front porch and talking to them about their one vote at the convention is a lot different than sending some sort of digital advertising to somebody.
It's retail politics. That's the thing about conventions. It's retail politics. You can. I drove out of my way 2 hours to sit down with 2 delegates to take them out for coffee, right? And we talked for an hour. Ask them questions. I mean, you can't do that in your typical election. It was
we
awesome.
both love it. I was in Tell City 2 or 3 weeks ago talking to somebody that employs 14 people because it seemed like a great story about compost. And I love that. And you know what? People say, well, you're kind of wasting your time. No, this is for the enrichment of me.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm curious. And you're curious. And to be in politics these days and succeed, you've got to be a little daring. You've got to be curious. You've got to face risk, and it's all depending on you, Micah.
Yeah, I love it. It's well, maybe that's something we can work together to help maybe craft some legislation to change that nomination process for all statewide.
Oh,
I think that would be.
I don't know why the legislature wouldn't support that.
I can think of maybe 10 million reasons why. So
take money out of it.
That's it. That's the point, right? Take money out of it, and you and I would agree that's the problem. Money gets into it, and then it limits the average person from having a chance to be able to.
You'd probably be a member of Congress right now if
potentially
it wasn't primary.
Yeah, potentially. Well, and again, I think it's let the message and the person win, right? Like, and typically
one
with money,
person's voice.
Yeah, and when you have money, you can just out message everybody in a primary, the normal primary.
You can bludgeon people.
Yeah, that's right, and so I love that. I love that, Jim. Maybe we'll work together on that and this see if we can lobby for
as
that.
well as take a look at the code.
Yes,
have a sunset committee.
Yes, that would be amazing. I think those are 2 great
that would
ideas.
be a voice of the people.
Yes,
too.
yep. Hey, so tell people where they can find you and.
As I say on Rob Kendall's show, Merritt underline, not underscore, Merritt underscore Merritt, Jim underscore Merritt on Twitter, and Merritt in the Morning is my podcast.
Okay.
Jim Merritt's Indiana, working on local talk and several other adventures, reaching out to people and talking about the issues that I care about.
I love it, Jim. Well, hey, thanks for coming on to the podcast here, and I think it was very, very, very enlightening. I love the history, right? I mean, there's not too many people who have got that history of politics in Indiana like you have. And
if anybody ever wants to walk around the State House, I'll give you 5 different ideas that happened here that you might not know about, because I made this place my home.
When you retire someday, you should retire and do a part-time gig as a tour guide. I think that you'd be living your best life, I think, if you did that.
I've actually thought about it.
I can imagine.
The guides downstairs and I were very, very close.
Oh, that's awesome. That does not surprise me in the least.